Hello, dear participants, and welcome to this webinar on the doctoral networks of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. My name is Sibylla Martinelli. I am the national contact point for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions in Switzerland. I will lead you through this presentation on the doctoral networks of the MSCA, and my dear colleague Juliane will be in charge of the chat. There she is. Today, you will get an idea of what the doctoral networks are about. We will introduce eligibility criteria of the doctoral networks. You will also get some information about the different panels, about the proposal structure. But very importantly, you will also learn what kind of support and training you can get and where to turn to in case you're interested in applying for such a Marie Curie doctoral network. This webinar is brought to you by the Net for Mobility Plus project, which is a network financed by the EU, which helps facilitate the work of MSCA National Contact Points, NCPs in short. The presentation will be recorded and uploaded on the Net for Mobility Plus website. So if you want to rewatch it or send the link to interested colleagues, please feel free to do so. We will also send you the link to the recorded presentation in a follow-up email, and also this follow-up email will contain also the PDF version of the presentation. We will do our best to answer your questions during this event. However, if questions should arise later or could not be answered in the chat, they can be sent to the NCPs in your country. Their contact data can be found either on the Funding and Tender Opportunities portal, but also on the Net for Mobility Plus website. You see here the map of MSCA NCP contacts worldwide on the Net for Mobility Plus website. So you just click on the country where you are currently, and you will see whom you should contact. The European Commission claims that there is a MSCA, so an action for every stage of a career. If you want to know more about the other actions than the doctoral networks, I would like to invite you to check on the official MSCA website. This website was just updated and has a nice and appealing new look. Marie Skłodowska-Curie was the name giver for this program because her life, her path, and her attitude reflect the main features of this program, its excellence and mobility. And as the rest of the MSCA, the doctoral networks are also about career development and training for excellent researchers. As you might know, this year, a new research framework program of the European Union started. It is called Horizon Europe and will last until the end of 2027. If you compare it with the former one that was called Horizon 2020, there are some principles and novelties of Horizon Europe that can be highlighted. Actions were streamlined. They have a clear identity because there are no longer the different sub-actions, the different implementation modes, or specific panels. Rules became simpler, conditions were harmonized. For example, there is only one single mobility rule for all actions, and definitions were fine-tuned. So, for example, the former early-stage researchers are now called doctoral candidates, and the formerly called experienced researchers are now called postdoctoral researchers. With regards to managing the demand, a restriction on resubmissions will be introduced from next year onward. But importantly, this does not apply to this year's call. New guidelines on supervision were published to ensure that researchers are adequately supervised. And then furthermore, sustainable behaviors and policies will be promoted through the MSCA Green Charter, also in Green Deal thematic clustering events, for example. All MSCA projects are encouraged to embrace diversity. And family allowances will be accessible to all, even if parental status changes during the duration of the project. And this is, of course, in the interest of non-discrimination and of equal opportunities. Long-term leave allowance were introduced in case of researchers' leave, including maternity or paternity leave, sick leave, or special leave. And there's a broader definition now of family to ensure full access to these allowances. And the intersectoral exposure will be encouraged through incentives. As in the former program, in Horizon Europe, there are 5 Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. The MSCA Doctoral Networks, the former MSCA ITNs, the MSCA Staff Exchanges, the formerly called Research and Innovation Staff Exchanges, or short RISE, then the MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowships, the former individual fellowships that offer funding for excellent researchers with excellent projects and also for the training and acquisition of skills. And then there's the MSCA Co-Fund and the MSCA and Citizens, formerly called Researchers' Night. Today's info event is about the doctoral networks. This action is funding training networks for doctoral students. Doctoral programs are funded which respond to well-identified needs in different research and innovation areas and which expose the researchers to the academic and non-academic sector and offer training in research related as well as research related skills or techniques, as well as in competences relevant for innovation and long-term employability. As in all MSCA, also the MSCA DNs focus on research and transferable skills and on career development, on supervision, and also on internationality. Doctoral networks are neither a research project nor a pure training program. They are a combination of both. So they are advancing an area of research whilst at the same time training doctoral candidates. So these projects should be thus greater than the sum of their parts. Doctoral networks aim at increasing career prospects of researchers within and outside academia. And they help researchers gain new knowledge, which will foster the conversion of ideas into products and services. And furthermore, an aim of these projects is to enhance researchers' networks and communication capacities, as well as the cooperation and transfer of knowledge between sectors and disciplines. So all in all, these networks will hopefully increase employability of researchers in Europe. If you look at the results of a study carried out within the EURAC-SINT EU project, you see that typically less than half of the doctoral graduates will be employed in academia immediately after graduation, and less than 10 to 15% will achieve a long-term academic career. So the European Commission wants their funding schemes to prepare researchers for a career outside academia as well. You can see on this slide the wide range of researchers who, upon leaving the academic sector, find employment elsewhere. Moreover, the data from this study showed also that out of the surveyed researchers, only 6% would consider returning to academia. The MSCA doctoral networks, as all MSCA, have a so-called bottom-up approach, meaning research can be freely chosen. All domains of research and technological development are eligible for funding. Consortia of universities, research institutions, and research infrastructures, but also businesses, including SMEs, and other socioeconomic actors can apply for funding. There are different ways an organization can participate in a doctoral network: as beneficiary, as associated partner, or as associated partner linked to a beneficiary. I will briefly explain each of these modes of participation. If an organization joins a consortium as beneficiary, they sign the grant agreement and have the responsibility for the proper implementation of the action. They contribute directly to the implementation of the research, of the transfer of knowledge and training activities. In doctoral networks, this involves the recruiting, the supervising and hosting, training and seconding of researchers, or managing or funding programs. In doctoral networks, all beneficiaries must recruit at least one doctoral candidate. And beneficiaries are required to host at their premises this doctoral candidate and supervise the recruited researchers, or use associated partners linked to them to do so. Exactly. Then associated partners, short AP, are entities which participate in a project, but without the right to charge costs or claim contributions. They contribute to the implementation of the action, but do not sign the grant agreement. Associated partners may not employ researchers. When associated partners are involved, beneficiaries are encouraged to sign a partnership agreement with them to regulate the internal relationship between all participating organizations. Associated partners linked to a beneficiary are organizations with an established capital or legal link with the beneficiary, which is not limited to the project nor specifically created for its implementation. These entities implement action tasks, for example, hosting and training of researchers in doctoral networks. The associated partners linked to a beneficiary do not have the right to claim costs directly and may not employ the researcher under the action. The type of link and involvement of such entities must be clearly described in the proposal and will be assessed as part of the evaluation. Applications must be submitted by a consortium including at least 3 independent legal entities, each established in a different EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country, and with at least one of them established in a EU member state. Should none of them be entitled to award a doctoral degree, a university or a consortium grouping of academic research institutions um, that is entitled to award a doctoral degree must be added to the project as an associated partner or an associated partner linked to a beneficiary. Not more than 40% of the EU contribution may be allocated to beneficiaries in the same country. The financial management of Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions differs from other research projects on the Horizon Europe. In the MSCA, the EU contribution is based on unit costs, which are expressed in person months. The EU contribution will be automatically calculated from the information provided in the proposal using the rates and coefficients given in the work program. The work program is the legally binding document for all MSCAs. It is available on the Doctoral Network call page on the Funding and Tender Opportunities portal. So unit costs organized in several cost categories are used instead of funding rates. And the amounts of the unit costs are subject to annual changes, which are stated in the work program for the respective year. You can see on this slide the contributions of the EC for the doctoral networks. As explained, these are unit costs, so pre-calculated costs for the implementation of the action. The living allowance that you see here is a gross amount, including compulsory deductions under national law, such as, for example, employer and employee social security contributions and direct taxes. The beneficiary must recruit each eligible doctoral candidate under an employment contract or under equivalent direct contract with full social security coverage. A country correction coefficient applies to the living allowance in order to ensure equal treatment and purchasing power parity for all researchers. This coefficient is the one applicable to the country of the recruiting beneficiary. The beneficiary must pay to the doctoral candidates at least the amount of the living allowance, minus all compulsory deductions under national legislation. A top-up may be paid to the researchers in order to complement this contribution. This is allowed. In addition to the living allowance, all doctoral candidates must receive a mobility allowance. This allowance covers their additional private mobility-related costs, like travel and accommodation costs. But this is not the same as to cover their professional costs under the action, which are covered rather by the research training and networking contribution. If the recruited doctoral candidate has or acquires family obligations during the action duration, for example, marriage or relationship with equivalent status to marriage, or if there will be children, then the family allowance must be paid to him or her as well, on top of living and mobility allowance. The long-term leave allowance contributes to the personal costs incurred by the beneficiaries in case of the researcher's leave, for example, parental leave, sick leave, or special leave, longer than 30 consecutive days. And then there is the special needs allowance that contributes to the additional costs for the acquisition of special needs items and services for researchers with disabilities. The research training and networking contribution should cover, for example, costs for the training and networking activities that contribute directly to the researcher's career development. For example, participation in conferences or trips related to work on the action, training, language courses, lab material, books, or publication costs. But also research expenses, or also visa related fees and travel expenses. Yes, and all additional costs arising from secondments, for example, also. And then the last category is the 1,200 euro per month management and indirect contribution. This should cover the beneficiary's additional costs in connection with the action. For example, personal costs for project management or coordination, but also indirect costs. So we have a living allowance of 3,400 euro per month, then a mobility allowance of 600 euro, family allowance, if applicable, of 660 euros, plus research training and networking costs, 1,600 euro per month, and management and indirect contribution, 1,200 euro per month. The rates that I just showed you apply to doctoral candidates devoting themselves to their project on a full-time basis. Researchers are allowed in the doctoral networks to implement the project on a part-time basis. And this should, of course, be in agreement with the supervisor and also with the beneficiary. And with prior, it should also be approved by the granting authority, so by the in accordance with the project officer in Brussels. In the doctoral networks, such a request is limited to personal or family reasons. In cases of part-time work, the doctoral candidates must dedicate at least 50% of their working time to the action, and the recruiting beneficiary should report the costs as pro rata of the applicable full-time unit contributions. The overall EU contribution for MSCA doctoral networks is limited to a maximum of 360 person month. However, for industrial or joint doctoral programs, the EU contribution can go up to a maximum of 540 person months, and this is to further incentivize the development of these schemes. So through an increase in the total EU contribution, MSCA doctoral networks are encouraged to lead to industrial or joint doctorates. Joint doctorates represent a highly integrated type of international, intersectoral, and multi or interdisciplinary collaboration in doctoral training. They lead to the delivery of a joint, double, or multiple doctoral degree that is recognized in at least 2 EU member states or Horizon Europe associated countries. So researchers must be enrolled in a doctoral program, leading to the award of a doctoral degree in at least 2 member states or associated countries for such joint doctorates. Applicants for these types of programs, so for example, institutions in the consortium, must provide at the time of the submission of the proposal a pre-agreement to award such a joint double or multiple degree to the doctoral candidates. And the proposal should indicate from which institutions a researcher is expected to receive the degrees. Joint doctorates must set up a joint governance structure also with joint admission, selection, supervision, monitoring, and assessment procedures. Through industrial doctorates, doctoral candidates will step outside academia and develop skills in industry and business by being jointly supervised by academic and non-academic organizations, both of which can be established in the same EU member state or associated country. In order to reach the objectives of industrial doctorates, at least one of the 3 independent legal entities must be from the academic sector, and at least one must come from the non-academic sector. Doctoral candidates must spend at least 50% of their time, their fellowship duration in the non-academic sector in this type of program. The duration of a doctoral network project should not exceed 48 months. So this applies for the 3 different types. 48 months from the starting date set out in the grant agreement. And this is including the time needed to recruit and select the doctoral candidates. The duration of each fellowship on the basis of full-time employment is minimum 3 and maximum 36 months. So MSCA doctoral networks should exploit complementarities between participating organizations and should foster sharing of knowledge and networking activities, for example, through the organization of workshops and conferences. Proposed training activities should respond to well-identified needs in various R&I areas. Doctoral networks should develop substantial training modules, including digital ones addressing key transferable skills and also competences common to all fields. And they should foster the culture of open science, of innovation and entrepreneurship. In particular, doctoral networks should adequately prepare doctoral candidates for increased research collaboration and information sharing, which is made possible, of course, by new digital technologies, for example. Intersectoral secondments of researchers to other participating organizations, including in 3rd countries, are encouraged if relevant, if feasible, and also if beneficial for the researchers. And if they are in line, if they, the secondments are in line with the project objectives. And this is another measure which will increase the employability of the researchers outside academia. So secondments are eligible for up to 1/3 of the actual the duration spent implementing the research training activities under this action. Each MSCA doctoral network should have a clearly identified steering board coordinating network-wide trainings and research activities and establishing continuous communication and exchange of best practice among the participating organizations in order to maximize the benefits of the partnership. Supported researchers within a doctoral network project must be doctoral candidates, as I mentioned, and this means that they are not yet in possession of a doctoral degree at the date of recruitment. And the researchers must be enrolled in a doctoral program mandatorily. Recruited researchers can be of any nationality, but must comply with the mobility rule, which says that the researchers they must not have resided or carried out the main activity in the country of the recruiting beneficiary for more than 12 months in the 36 months immediately before the recruitment date. Things like national service, short stays, like holidays or time spent by the researchers as part of a procedure for obtaining refugee status are not taken into account, calculating this 3 years, this 12 months in 3 years. The MSCA are not only based on the principle of physical mobility, so that researchers who receive funding have to move from one country to another to acquire new knowledge and skills and to develop their research career. Researchers are also strongly encouraged in these MSCA to move between sectors and disciplines. And coming with this so-called triple I dimension is a strong collaboration with industry and SMEs. Whether enrolled in a regular, in a joint, or in an industrial network, doctoral network, particular attention is to be paid to the quality of the supervision of the doctoral candidates, and also to the quality of mentoring arrangements and also career guidance. So new guidelines on supervision have been published earlier this year. You find them under the link that I indicated here on this slide. And there's an additional document that is good for you to know if you're interested in the doctoral networks. It's a green charter, which is a set of general principles and objectives that promote the sustainable implementation of research activities in line with the European Green Deal and also in line with the United Nations 2030 agenda and with the Sustainable Development Goals. The MSCA Green Charter constitutes a code of good practice for all recipients of MSCA funding. And it promotes the mainstreaming of environmental considerations in project implementation. Doctoral networks proposals will be evaluated by one of 8 main evaluation panels. It's chemistry, social sciences and humanities, economic sciences, information science and engineering, environment and geosciences, life sciences, mathematics, physics. Yeah, that's it. These 8. Each panel will establish 2 ranked lists. No, wait. Yes, there will be a ranked list for all the 3 implementation modes. So applications will be evaluated by experts based on the award criteria, excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. And the proposals will be evaluated against the doctoral network award criteria. And there are also weighting factors applied. And both the award criteria and the weighting factors are set out in the work program in the MSCA part. Proposals are evaluated remotely, and evaluation scores will be awarded for each of the 3 criteria. All of the separate elements of each criterion will be considered by the experts in their assessment. So you see that excellence is weighted 50%, impact 30%, and implementation 20%. And evaluation scores will be awarded for each of the three criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. Each criterion will be scored out of 5, and scores can have a resolution of 1 decimal place and will be subject to the according weighting factor. And then a weighted total score will be calculated based on the scores of the 3 individual criteria. An application scoring equal or above 70% will be considered for funding, of course, within the limits of the available call topic budget, and other applications below will be rejected. For this year, there are not yet any resubmission limitations foreseen, but these are expected for the calls from next year onward. The doctoral network proposal is composed of Part A and Part B. Part A contains administrative forms like general information, administrative data of participating organizations, budget information, ethics, and also declarations related to eligibility. Part B is kind of the core part of the proposal, and it contains the details of the proposed research and training activities, also and the practical arrangements planned to implement these activities. This part will be used by the independent experts to undertake their assessment. And the award criteria are known. The structure of the doctoral network proposal will be along the content of these criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. So the excellence part of such a doctoral network proposal is about the quality and pertinence of the project's research and innovation objectives and the extent to which they are ambitious and go beyond the state of the art. Then also about the soundness of the proposed methodology, including interdisciplinary approaches, consideration of the gender dimension, and other diversity aspects, if relevant, for the research project, and also including the quality of open science practices. Then, furthermore, this part is about the quality and credibility of the training program, including transferable skills, or also inter or multidisciplinarity, intersectoral and gender aspects, as well as other diversity aspects. And then furthermore, it is about the quality of the supervision. And here, this is including also the mandatory joint supervision for industrial and joint doctorate projects. The impact part of the proposal should cover the contribution to structuring doctoral training at the European level and to strengthening European innovation capacity. And this is including the potential for contribution of the non-academic sector to the doctoral training, and also including the potential for developing sustainable elements of doctoral programs. Then this impact part should also cover the credibility of the measures to enhance the career perspectives and also the employability of researchers and the contribution to their skills development. And then it should cover also the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize the expected outcomes and impacts as they are set out in the dissemination and exploitation plan, including also communication activities. And finally, and this is new this year, this part of the proposal should also cover the magnitude and importance of the project's contribution to the expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts. So major changes, I think, are within this part, which is about magnitude and importance of the project's contribution to the expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts. So here, if you apply for such a fellowship, you are asked, not doctoral networks, you are asked to kind of think big. Impact is more than just immediate tangible results in the form of papers or employable PhDs. It is not only academic impact, but also societal and economic. So it can have impact in multiple areas like cultural, economic, educational, and environmental, social, political impact. It can have impact in one of the 5 EU missions or in related fields. Whereas outputs are the products of research, and this is kind of short term, the outcomes are people using these products, for example, products in the midterm, and impact is eventual long-term changes in society, for example, which result from outputs and outcomes. And you should show in the project the pathway from the output, like a publication or an employable research, to outcome to the impact. So that's new this year. And finally, the implementation part of the proposal is about the quality and effectiveness of the work plan, about the assessment of risks and appropriateness of the effort assigned to the work packages, and also about the quality, capacity, and role of each participant, including hosting arrangements, and also extent to which the consortium as a whole brings together the necessary expertise. This year's call opened on 22nd June with a deadline on 16 November this year. And the call budget for this year's call is roughly 400 million euro. In Horizon 2020, in the former framework program, the now doctoral networks were called ITNs, Innovative Training Networks. And looking back on the last 7 years, we can say that in the different years between 2014 and 2020, between 1153 and 1714 ITN project proposals have been evaluated per call, of which between 106 and 147 could be funded per call. So the success rate has been constantly low throughout the last 7 years. And with regards to manage the demand, a restriction on resubmission will be introduced from 2020 calls onwards. But as I mentioned, this doesn't apply to the 21 call. I forgot to move the slide. I'm very sorry. Okay, you see here again that are the numbers of evaluated ITNs over the last 7 years and numbers of successful ITNs per call and the success rates over the last 7 years. So here are some things you could consider before you start writing such a doctoral network proposal, or also during the writing process of such a proposal. So it's good to choose your network partners wisely. It's a lot about quality and trust. And it's also good to plan your deliverables and milestones adequately, so not to add too many of them, and to plan a sustainable recruitment strategy. And also, it's a good idea to inquire for local training opportunities that you can offer to the doctoral candidates in your network, and also to actively communicate with your consortium. Proposal submission will still be done through the funding and tender opportunities portal, where also all the important documents like the work program or guide for applicants will be are published. Now, in the meantime, they are all published there on the respective call page. This is, I put the link here on this slide to the Doctoral Network call page, 21 call. Yes, definitely you should familiarize yourself with the guide for applicants and the work program. Yes, if you would like to apply for such a MSCA doctoral network. And then if you are looking for partners to build a consortium, there are various ways you can go. The EN Europe Enterprise Network has a partner search platform, and there is also partner search available on the EU funding and tender opportunities portal itself, and also on the platform Euraccess. And there is an expression of interest page also on the EU project Net for Mobility Plus, which is run by us, MSCA NCPs worldwide. Depending on where you are in the world, you can get the support you would like to from the worldwide net of national contact points for the MSCA. So you find the contacts of my colleagues worldwide via this link. And with this, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and spending this last hour. No, it was actually only 40 minutes with us. I wish you a nice rest of the day and all the best. Thank you.